Okay, um, hello everyone. My name is Diego Acevedo. I work as business intelligence analyst here in Peru, in a university called Universidad Tecnológica del Perú. And it's a great pleasure to be here today with you. Thanks to Matias for the invitation. Without further ado, let's get into it. As you probably know, as we already know, it is common for companies today, companies of all sizes, to deploy advertising strategies digitally. And among the main platforms that support this type of advertising, we have Google Ads, Bing Ads, and many others, such as Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, and etc. So let's take, for instance, Google, Facebook, and Bing Ads, which in my experience, I have worked with them many times in many projects. So let's take these three as example. These three platforms that we are taking as example, they make their APIs available to extract the data automatically. And even there are programming languages such as Python, R, which we are going to see today, Python. And they have specific packages or libraries to connect with these APIs that these platforms provide. Here we can see the main of them. For example, for Google Ads, the library is called Google Ads as well. For Facebook, it is called Facebook Business. For Bing Ads, it is called Bing Ads as well. Just the same name. It's the very same name. So, as I was mentioning to you, I was telling you, in my experience, I have successfully bring the data from Google and Facebook with this package we are seeing here, Google Ads and Facebook Business. But I struggled a lot with Bing Ads. In that moment is when I found Windsor.ai, and I met Matias, and they helped me out with this problem. And right now, in my company, we are using Python combined with the connector that Windsor provides to bring the data from Bing Ads. We store this data in a data mart, and we use it in many Power BI reports. Okay, so in the examples today, we are going to see we're going to see 4 approaches to get this data from Bing Ads into Power BI. What are the approaches? We are going to pass one after one. The first is this one here. This first method is to generate the Bing Ads API URL through the Windsor connector and call it directly into Power BI using the web connector that Power BI provides. It is a very direct method, actually. It's perhaps not the most recommended, but it can help us to have results in a very quickly way. So I have prepared here a Jupyter notebook with the code we are going to use. First, we have to import the required libraries. I always suggest to save your credentials, not to type them directly into your code file, your Python or Jupyter notebook file, but to save it into a JSON file and call it in your code. Here I have a JSON file, a JSON structure where I put all my credentials that I'm going to use today. Here I am I am setting the parameters that I am going to need to bring this data. For example, here we have a date preset. I am telling the connector that I just require the data from the last 7 days. Here in the variable fields, I am telling the connector that I will only need the fields of date, campaign, clicks, spent, and device. And in last place, I am getting all this together to make the URL that I am gonna call with the request library here. Now, this will take a moment to load. And here we have our data frame. We have a few fields. Now, obviously, an advantage of using Pandas, using Python here with Pandas, is that we can make some pre-processing. We can already make some treatment of the data before loading it into our Power BI report. It is an advantage because, as we probably know, if we have used Power BI before, Power Query, the Power BI editor, is not very efficient when your data volume gets larger and larger. So if you can pre-process the data in Pandas, it's a more recommended way. So here we have our data frame. Now let's take this code. Let's take this code into a Power BI desktop file. Okay, so here is our Power BI file. Let's go to get data. Sorry, my Power BI settings are in Spanish, but I will talk to you in English. I go to more options, other again, and then to Python script. Here I am gonna copy and paste the code I just showed you, this one here. So Power BI can use it to create a data frame. And finally, I need the data frame. This will take a few seconds. And this will show us a preview of the data frame we have generated with the code. This will only take a few more seconds. Let's be patient. Here it is. Let's transform to see the data. All right, and here we have it. If you realize, here in the transformation, when I took this JSON structure, transformed it into a data frame of Pandas, first I changed the date field. It was on a string format. I transformed it into a datetime format. And also I created a key for the device column. I used here a numpy method, which is numpy select. And I put a code when the device is computer, it takes the value of 1. When it's a smartphone, it takes the value of 2. And when it is a tablet, it takes the value of 3. Okay, so we can see this column right here is called device key. And this is a fast method. If we have a good knowledge of Python, we can use it this way. Actually, this was the second method I was going to tell you. The first one was actually a lot easier. Let me show you here. We just saw the second method, which is using Python as data source in Power BI. Now we will see how we can use the Windsor connector directly into Power BI. Let me please take the API URL. As you probably know, Power BI has a web connector. And in this web connector, we can just copy and paste this API URL we generated with Windsor. I go to web. I just copy and paste here. It takes a few seconds to load. And here we have it. This first method, as you just saw, is to generate the Bing Ads API URL through Windsor. I have a billing account with them, so they just provide me this URL and call it directly into Power BI. As I mentioned to you, and just like the first method with Python, it is a very direct method, and perhaps is not the most recommended, but it can help us to have results very quickly. Okay, so let's call this first method, and this one second method. Give it a little of order. Now let's go with a third approach, which is this one. Now we'll repeat some steps of the first approach we saw. I am gonna request the API URL with Python, but this time I will not write it directly into Power BI. I will call the JSON structure with the API URL, and with this I will write a SQL table, and after that I will call that SQL table into Power BI. Now this is a more recommended approach actually, because generally the data is needed centralized in some database, and it's not just in Power BI that we are going to have it. I mean, it's not the data is not meant to be only one Power BI report. This will allow the data to be available for other analysis, for other dashboards, and other users. Okay, so let's go back to our Jupyter notebook. And here we have our third method. We are going to need these libraries here. Just like the first method, I am going to to get the JSON file with the credentials. In this case, I am using the server and the database in SQL Server that my company is using right now. Okay, in your work and in your job environment, or in your probably you are just learning right now, you can use your own machine, your own computer. Okay, but in this case, I am using the server and the database of my job. Now I will connect to the database. It says the connection is successful. I will extract the data with the API URL. I am getting the data from the last 30 days in this case. I am requesting the same 5 fields: date, campaign, clicks, spend, and device. I get this all together into a URL and I make the request. And finally, I make this JSON, turn this JSON structure into a Pandas data frame. Okay. Now I will make some transformations, just like the first method we saw. I turn the date field from a string to a datetime. I also will build this new column called device key, which has the values 1 for computer, 2 for smartphone, and 3 for tablets. And now let's load it into SQL Server, into a SQL Server database. First, I will make sure for this demonstration that I don't have any data in my table. This is the table. I am going to truncate it. I'm going to execute this last step. This will take a few moments to be accomplished. So let's be patient again. And it is completed successfully. Let's check. Let's make a select again here. And here we have it. We have the data for the last 30 days. Now let's call this table into our Power BI file. Let's go into our desktop file. I will call the server. If I am not wrong, this is the name. D178865. All right. Now the name of the server of the database is Bing Ads. Now a select from will do. Let's just copy and paste this. This is the third method. And here we have it. Let's disable the charge of this table, also of this one. And now we have we went through 3 approaches of getting this data from Bing Ads into Power BI. I recommend the third one because for I just mentioned to you, because the data will probably be required for another kind of report, for another analysis, and not only for one Power BI report. Now that we have this data, we can load it. And we can make a dashboard if we need to. Right now, we are getting short of time, I think. But for example, I could make, if I want to see how is the evolution of my spend across the days. Now it is, I will just turn to date. And here we have it again. I will activate the labels so we can see a little of numbers here. I think this is making a count, not a sum, because the numbers are in a text format. Let's put it into a float format. And now let's say this is dollars. And I don't want a count, I want a sum. And now this is the right numbers. Here we can see how is the evolution of spend across the days of the last 30 days. We can add some slicer here, for example, the device. And we can see how this graphic, obviously Power BI is always offers this kind of like dynamics graphics. We can see it right here. We can see that computer is the most used device and is the more expensive one for our company. A smartphone has some important numbers, is the second one, and tablet is very low. But there are a few people that uses their tablets to navigate, and they just click our advertisement. So after this, you can upload this Power BI report into the cloud, into the Power BI service. You can share it with your coworkers, with your area, with your probably with your BI team, to realize further analysis. To finish, I will show you a fourth method. I am not going to build it from scratch because we don't have much time right now, but I will show you what data flow I am using right now, using this red pipeline we are seeing, this fourth method. So let me share you this. Give me a second, please. This is going to be the last approach I want to show you, I want to share with you. Okay. So for those who don't know this environment, or for those who don't remember very well, this is a SQL integration services project. I am using Visual Studio right now. This data flow task has five steps. The first one is to execute the Python script, which is this one. As you can see, this script is very similar to what we have seen so far. It is using JSON request and Pandas libraries to transform this JSON structure that we get from using the Windsor connector into a Pandas data frame. The difference is that in this case, I am not writing directly into my SQL table. I am writing this data frame into a text file, and I will explain you why just in a second. So this is the first step. The second step is to clean a temporal table. I have two tables for this data flow, which is the fact table, is the table that I'm using to call it from Power BI, and a temporal table. With this step, I am truncating the temporal table. With this other step, I am filling the table with the data I just brought into my text file. Here I am validating duplicates. I will only load into my final table those rows that are not duplicated. Actually, this is an incremental load, and is a more suggested way to work in a production environment. So it is a step only executes this SQL statement. This deletes all the table, all the results of this inner join in the final table. And finally, once we have deleted these duplicates, we append the new data into our fact table in SQL Server. Now, in this case, I am upgrading the data into a text file instead of doing directly into a SQL Server table, because we are in a production environment. Writing in the database, in the SQL database, with some other language like Python, R, or any other, may not be allowed, probably by a company policy. It could be for a security or performance matter. So in my experience, I don't use Python or other language directly into a SQL Server, because it has happened that many scripts run at the same time with a large volume of data, causing our servers to crash. Obviously, if this restriction does not exist in your company, you are free to write with Python directly into a SQL table. Okay. So what this last method does is to load the data, and after that we can call the table into Power BI. So this has been all of me.